set, but just two things before we start. We've had some problems with sound sometimes on these meetings, so if everyone could speak up, project, pretend you're on the stage. So big loud voices. And if you're having trouble hearing, don't hesitate to stick your hand up and say, I didn't catch that. And the other thing I thought we might do, since we have a few new faces around the table, is just go around the table and introduce ourselves. So I'll start. I'm John Cook. I'm one of the councillors, and for my sins, I chair the RJB.
I'm Emma Roberts. I am clerk to the IGB.
Good morning, I'm Jess Anderson, I'm the legal advisor to the IGB.
I'm Martin Allen, business and facilities lead for partnership.
Alison McLeod, I'm lead for strategy and transformation for the partnership.
Angela Scott, Chief Executive of Aberdeen City Council.
Caroline Howard, I'm medical lead for the partnership.
Joanne Smith, I'm Commissioner lead for Aberdeen City Health and Social Care Partnership.
Hi, I'm Julie Wonder, I'm the chief nurse and lead for Beauty and Rehab for the partnership.
Morning, I'm Kay Dyack. I'm the Strategic Home Pathways Lead for the partnership.
Morning, Claire Wilson, Chief Officer of Social Work.
Hi, Rose Harper, Executive Assistant to Twin Mitchell Health and Fraser Bell.
Morning, hi, Sandy Reid. I'm the lead for people and organisation in the partnership.
Hello, I'm Martin Gregg. I'm a member of Aberdeen City Council, member of the IGB.
Richie Johnson, member of NHS Grampian, board member of NHS Grampian, and just joining you today. So glad to be here.
Fraser Bell, Chief Operating Officer at Partnership.
Good morning, Hussein Patwa, Vice Chair of the RJB and also a non-executive.
And we have some folk online.
Morning, everybody. Graham Law, the communications lead for the partnership.
I'll go next. I'm Jim Curry, Branch Chair at Unison.
Hi, I'm Phil Mackey. I'm a non-voting IGB member on behalf of NHS Grampian. I'm also a consultant in public health and prevention lead for the partnership.
Hi, I'm Jenny Gibb. I'm Nurse Director for the Health and Social Care Partnerships and Professional Nurse Advisor on this IGB.
Hi, I'm Leslie Fullerton and I'm Finance Operations Manager at Aberdeen City Council.
Hi, I'm Mark Burrell. I'm NHS Grampian board member and member of the IJB.
I'll go next. I'm Debbie McMullen. I'm a Senior Care Manager at Care Management and I'm here observing today.
Hi, I'm Jane Gibson. I'm Staff Partnership Lead for the partnership.
Hello, I'm Sandra Borthwick. I'm a project management officer for the strategy and transformation team, just here observing today.
Hi there, I'm Judith McLennan. I'm the lead for Specialist Mental Health and Learning Disability Services.
Hi, I'm Georgia Baxter and I'm a Finance Development Officer from Aberdeen City Council and I'm just here observing today.
Hi, I'm Sarah Gibbon. I'm a Programme Manager and I'm here today for the budget protocol item.
Hi everyone, I'm Bukola Oyedele, Project Manager for Strategy and Transformation. I'm here observing today.
Hi everyone, it's Maggie Hepburn here from ACFO, which is Aberdeen City's third sector interface.
Hi everyone, I'm David Blackburn. I'm head of the School of Medicine, Medical Sciences and Nutrition at the University of Aberdeen, and I'm a member of the NHS Grampian board.
Morning everyone, I'm Stuart Lambert and a Transformation Programme Manager, part of the Strategy and Transformation team within the partnership.
Morning, I'm Christian Arad, one of you elected councillor.
Is there anyone online who we've missed so far?
Oh yeah, sorry, Amanda. Hi, I'm Amanda Foster. I'm the sort of the person that's sort of for social care. One of the sort of representatives for the social care.
Sandra, sorry, we're just doing round the table doing introductions because we've got a few new faces.
Absolutely, and glad to be back again. And my name's Councillor Sandra McDonald. I'm subbing for Councillor Bunsell today.
I think that's everybody, so I will hand over to Emma to do the housekeeping.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning and welcome to the meeting of the Integration Joint Board. Today's meeting is a hybrid meeting. We have some people in the Health Village, others participating remotely. The meeting is being recorded and published online after the meeting. All attendees leave their camera on, but switch off their microphone when not speaking. Switch on both camera and microphone when you are invited to speak, so that this is picked up on the recording. If you wish to speak, please use the raise your hand function, or indicate in the meeting chat, and I will alert the chair. In the event of a fire, you should follow the fire exit signs behind me. Continue to stairwell 1, downstairs to fire exit A on the ground floor. Fire assembly point is located in the Frederick Street multi-storey car park, the right-hand side on the ground floor. We'll now do a roll call and would ask members to confirm their attendance when their name is called, so that this is clear in the recording and can also be recorded in the minute. Councillor Coote here. Jane Packwatt, Vice Chair. Councillor Ballard.
Present.
David Blackburn.
Present.
Richie Johnson. Carol.
Present.
Councillor Gregg.
Present.
Councillor McDonald for Councillor Bunsell. Present. Amanda Foster. Kenneth McAlpine.
Yes.
Jim Curry.
Present.
Jamie Donaldson. Jenny Gibb.
Yes, I'm here.
Christine Hemming. Maggie Hepburn.
Present.
Caroline Howard. Present. Una McFarlane. Bill Mackey.
Present.
Claire Wilson for Peter Simpson. And we have apologies from Councillor Bunsell, Fiona Mitchell-Hill, Penny Rowe and Graves.
Thank you, Emma. So I've got a few little introductory remarks. The first thing I want to address is we've had IT problems, as you'll be aware, meant that we couldn't use the mod.gov app and the papers weren't available for public scrutiny on the website. As some of you may know, that has caused, it's not just this meeting, it's not our officers here, it's a problem with the external supplier. As some of you know, it's caused the cancellation of the council committees later this week. We're going ahead for a bunch of reasons. Reason one, it's legal. The council is governed by the, yes, will correct me if I get this wrong, the 73 Local Government Act, which means that you have to have the papers available for public scrutiny a certain time before the meeting starts. We're governed by the Public Bodies Joint Working Scotland Act 2014, which means that I'm a geek, which means that we don't have to publish the papers. So that's the legal nicety. Practicality was, the problem with the IT was happening last week. We were hoping it'd be fixed by Friday. It still wasn't fixed yesterday. And what we didn't want to do was to send out a cancellation notice late yesterday afternoon when some people picked it up, not least because yesterday was a public holiday in Aberdeen. So could have had some logistics problems. So that's why we're going ahead and the council committee isn't. apart from the fact that coordinating diaries between Aberdeen City Council and NHS Grampian for this meeting is much more difficult than rescheduling one of the council committees. But to say that at the outset, we've got new members here today, David Blackburn and Richie Johnson from NHS Grampian. So I'd like to welcome them to their first meeting. A couple of other events to tell you about. Today at the Health Village here, there's a drop-in flu vaccination pop-up. So if anyone fancies their flu vaccine, you can pop downstairs to the pop-up. Next thing to tell you about, Saturday the 12th of October, there is an event at the Beach Ballroom. It's called Grampian Gathering, Community Planning Aberdeen, and it's basically to promote good health, good retirement, good well-being. So if you're able to get along to that, it would be jolly good. And yeah, the only other things to say are, in line with our usual practice, we will take breaks after approximately 90 minutes. We're almost at the end of an item. We may go into injury time, go slightly over 90 minutes, but we like to take regular breaks. Sandy will say, you're at your best.
With rest.
There you go.
I have stepped on it.
So yeah, we think it's good practice to take regular breaks because it makes us more efficient. Also, it sets an example to staff. And yeah, the other thing I wanted to say was we have voting members and non-voting members on the IJB. That's a legal nicety. Everybody's contribution is welcome. Voting members doesn't give you a monopoly of wisdom by any manner of means. So please feel free to stick your hand up, chip in as you see fit. That's my introductory remarks. Cling on for a bit. So we'll just get into the main part of the agenda. So item 2.1, do we have any declarations of interest or transparency statements? You're saying?
Thank you, John. Just my usual ones for completeness. I'm a member of the Diverse Experiences Advisory Panel, which is a named partner in the mental health and wellbeing delivery strategy. I'm also the lived experience representative on the Scottish Government's mental health and wellbeing leadership.
Thank you for that. Any more? Seeing any hands? Okay. That then takes us to item 3.1, which is termination of exempt business. Item 9.1 is exempt appendix on the supplementary procurement work plan. Are we happy to take that in private? Thank you very much. That takes us to item 4.1, which is the formal appointment of new members, Richard Johnson, David Blackburn, and welcoming them as voting members. And the proposal is that we Mr. Blackburn to the Governance Committee and Richard Johnson to the Risk Committee. Any questions, Sandra?
Absolutely delighted to do that, but and I know that on the IJB we don't tend to vote very often, but I would, as a lifelong supporter of women's rights and women's representation, I would like to point out that we are a little skewed towards men and with voting rights. So it's just to flag that up. But when you look around the room and when you know the work of this this board, I'm sure everyone is assured that our voices are very much heard, and that's to be welcome. But I did wish to just make that small point. But welcome the report and the recommendation.
I think that's a point well made that we ought to look at in the future for appointments. I know, Sandra, you've done a lot for women's rights. What you do, you're very keen on the Reclaiming the Night thing, for example. So thank you for that. But as I say, it's a point well made. Any more questions? Comments? Are we happy to approve the recommendations? Thank you very much. Personally, we didn't approve the recommendations, but you never know. That excuse me. That brings us to the video presentation. Members, we normally have a wee video at the start of the meeting just to get our heads into a kind of health and social care space, rather than it being too kind of formalistic, if that's the right word, that we have a council and NHS expertise. So I will hand over to Ross to do the honours with the video. I'm aware that folk online weren't really able to see or hear the video. So what we'll do is we'll circulate a link. I think that's I've seen that a number of times. We had World Suicide Prevention Day early on, and Samaritans we're showing that one online. I'll say I think it's really powerful. You know, as the video said, it's sometimes hard to tell when people are struggling to cope. But sometimes if you're struggling with mental health, you can have good days, bad days. Sometimes when you're having a bad day, when you have your clown smiley face and the world thinks you're okay, that's inside you're not okay. So that's one lesson from that. The other lesson I take from that is, you know, sometimes you say to people, how are you? And it's kind of like it's an alternative to saying good morning. You say, how are you? And you're not necessarily listening for the response. Sometimes you hear the response and it's, I'm okay. And actually, you should be saying, are you really okay? So suicide prevention is his job. It's not just the Samaritan's job or healthcare professionals' job. It's everybody's job. So you remember to check in. If you are struggling, you talk. But as I say, we'll circulate that video. I think it's a really important. Jamie, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, it was just a bit around that. Thanks very much, Chair. I attended the GAPF away day last week, and there was a really good presentation about psychological safety and how we need to give people the space to be able to come forward and create a safe working environment. I mean, we all know the extreme financial pressures everybody's sitting around this meeting is under. So it's not only the pressures on the ground floor, it escalates all the way up the tree. So it's checking in at all levels. You know, our senior managers are under extreme pressure to manage their staff. So let's not forget them as well. Thanks.
Thanks, Jim. Point well made. Point very well made indeed. Any other comments? Nope. Okay. So that brings us to item 4.3, which is the minute of the board meeting of the 9th of July. So this is for approval. I'll just whiz through the pages, page by page. For page 11, just shout if you've got any questions or comments. Page 12. Page 13. 14. Page 15. 16. 17. Page 18. Any comments? Are we happy to approve for accuracy? Thank you very much. That takes us to 4.4, which is the business planner. Does anyone have any questions for Fraser? No? All good? Happy to note it? Thank you very much. 4.5 is the insights specifics seminars. Are we going to move that or to note it rather? One thing I would say on these, it is extra time in people's diaries, significant time commitment, but things can be extremely useful and helpful. So officers who are putting them together do spend quite a lot of time. So I appreciate not everybody can come to all of them, but if you can make it, that would be much appreciated. Okay. Takes us to 4.6, which is the Chief Officer's report. Fiona is on holiday at the minute, so be over to Fraser for any questions. Have we got any questions or comments? Martin, sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'd like to ask about the care inspector at it's that there will be findings there for the two cases for Rugston. I'm just wondering, is there going to be a detailed action plan to follow up the findings? Really, there's a need for focused attention for improvement, and I think we would be looking for reassurances that there is some definite action that's going to take into. I mean, it's appreciate that it can take time, but that reassurance that there is a definite plan in place. John, if I could bring in here.
Okay, thank you. And you're right, there is significant work ongoing. So the care inspectorate have set certain requirements that they have to meet, but we also have the homes under legislation under a large scale investigation. So there's a very detailed action plan and weekly meetings for us to just ensure that requirements are being made and also to ensure people are safe. We've also got our care home team that are supporting the two homes, as well as community services are going in to try and bolster that help as much as we can and just work with families to ensure that the ongoing care is good.
That's really good to hear, because we're dealing with very vulnerable individuals. So that mention of weekly meetings, that's ongoing monitoring support. I think it's support that they're surely needing. So just wondering, will we find out about updates on on this? Will there be reports back through the chief officer's report, or in some way if we would want to have comfort of knowing that there's action there?
So we will obviously be putting in updates to the chief officer's report, but we also give more detailed updates to the England Care Governance Committee. So I'll go through that route.
Right.
We have quite a large number of homes in the city. We've got quite a significant care home team that offer support. There are very unique circumstances in two of these. There's two homes. One is a residential home, and one is obviously a home for learning disabilities, each with their own difficulties. So recruitment and staffing, changes of managers is enough to tip a home over the edge. So we just continue to work with all the homes, but regular reporting, and I will give an update in the next chief officer's report.
Okay. Thank you. That is very pleasing to hear. Thanks for that.
Thanks. Hussein next.
Yeah, not so much a question, but just a comment. I just want to commend this report, in particular the inclusion of comparisons between what we do as Aberdeen City and the national picture, specifically around staff sickness and absence. I think in terms of context, it's really helpful to have that comparator. I'm grateful for the inclusion into this report, and although I appreciate staff put in a lot of time and effort in compiling all of these reports, I would be very interested and appreciative to see our piece. But I just wanted to put on record my thanks for the work that's gone into it, which is pretty helpful.
Thanks for that. Sandra, did you have a question?
Yes, please. Just on the care inspectorate reports, can I ask whether how public that information is, and how does that how are the friends and relatives of those affected, well, not affected direct, well, you know, who are living there, how do they feed in, if you like?
So the care inspector reports are public. They're published on the care inspector website, and a lot of the time we will work closely with the care home in terms of our joint media statement, because the media always look at the care inspector website. We also work very closely, and we do this together with the provider in terms of resident meetings and meetings with family. We get a lot of their feedback. We also review and work with the families. We review every resident when there's a care inspector report like this. So we work very closely with family in terms of the needs and how they are, because a lot of the feedback we'll find has been quite mixed for this care home. Some families are saying they're very happy with the care, which we find a lot. Other families are not so happy, so we work with them to seek alternatives, but we do work, it's a very joined up approach in response.
I had a couple of questions on other elements, please, Chair. So on the comparisons between the NHS and Health and Social Care Partnership, I did wonder if we could, when we're looking at the data, put the scales on the y-axis, saying, because it when it catches your eye, the second one does look a lot worse, but the scales are different. I just wanted to ask the data underlying that. Are you confident that they are collected in the same way? And so, you know, to make sure that we're comparing apples with apples. Do we get any further breakdown of the data? You know, maybe the elements that are, it says in the report that a lot of it's to do with flu and colds. Do we get a kind of percentage of that, just to be able to drill down a bit deeper? That's
Cindy?
Yeah, thank you for the questions. I'd be pretty confident about the robustness and the kind of comparison. The data, the NHS in Scotland collects it and has collected it for a long time in the same process. So I often will say, for example, the local numbers, I'm very confident that they are comparing apples and apples over a long period of time. And I'd be pretty confident at a Scottish level that is the same. Those numbers are that's robust. We do get, as an individual partnership, can get additional breakdown of information. It takes you down to a level that is still not identifiable for individuals, and that can vary. But there's probably more information that we could present to future meetings if that was required does then take you into looking at individual teams and trends and within teams and within areas. So with that, more detail is available if that would seem to be a useful thing to members to see.
Can I ask a question in terms of the data? So there's a comparison between NHS and the partnership. Can I just check that the partnership is NHS staff, or is this all staff included council and NHS? So everybody in partnership, or is council data separate?
I think from understanding the data we're comparing us against is NHSG employed staff in this partnership. And what I was saying, the deadlines and the timescale is going to beat me. I think there's a reference in the report saying we can ensure that the next time the most relevant, most up-to-date ACC employed figures would be included in that. But it just wasn't possible to kind of get two things at the same time. So it's NHSG employed staff within the partnership.
And there, am I right in thinking there's quite a significant comparison between the NHS social health and social care partnership staff and the council? I suppose I'm just thinking about our work plan in terms of how we're supporting staff, so it's collective and we're not separating stuff jointly, and we're learning from each other within their organisations.
Yeah, I guess from a partnership point of view, in terms of our sickness absence and our staff well-being, for that purpose, we make no difference whether people are employed by ACC or NHSG. I think this process highlights different employers and different collecting mechanisms, but from a point of view of what we're doing and what we're trying to support, we make no difference to that. And I think from memory, the ACC employed part, I believe, is better than the rest of the ACC average. So council colleagues in the partnership average is better than the rest of the council, I think, whereas in comparison, the NHSG employed staff is higher than NHS Grampian. So the council colleagues are doing really well, and we want to support that, to continue to support that to the maximum.
Thank you.
Okay, I have Mark Burrell hand first, and Martin, come back. Mark?
Thanks very much, Chair. Just going back to Martin's point with regards to the care inspectorate reports, and obviously this would have to come through Clinical Care and Governance Committee, and just wanted that minuted that would be coming that way. I think that was already mentioned already. Have we got a time scale for that, please?
In terms of the report?
Yes, please, yeah.
Yes, it would just be, it would come to the next Clinical and Care Governance Committee. There would be a written update to the next.
Okay, thank you very much. I think it's important that it does come through there. I think I highlighted that previously, and I think that assurance really needs to come through that direction as well. So thanks very much.
Okay, and then I have Martin next on my list.
Thank you. I wanted to ask about the sickness absence statistics. I think that's interesting to see that NHS Grampian has got for lower than average rate. Consistent trend. We've got the figures there just for it's a snapshot one quarter. And I'm just wondering whether that compares previous same period last year. I mean, are the rates stable or just following a regular pattern? Are there any significant changes or variations over the year?
And one thing that I allude to is, I think if we would recognise this ourselves, that there is more sickness absence from April to March than there is from October to March than there is from April to October. I think you recognise that in your families and yourself. People have more holidays, we are inside more, there's less colds and flus and all that sort of stuff. So I think typically there's a challenge for partnerships and NHS Grampian that we have more staff off sick more from now till the end of March than we have had from now till April to now. That's a kind of challenge that we'd all recognise, but it's difficult to do much about it, notwithstanding John's everywhere plug for vaccinations as an example. Sickness absence in the next period would be very probably around flu absences, cold absences over the next 6 months. There's much less of that in the first 6 months of the year.
Thank you.
Okay. Any more questions, comments, Sandra?
We're kind of going backwards here, but at 4.1, it was really a question from my colleague about EMAR, and really wanted to know what number of residents are we talking about in the pilot that we're covering, and is the ongoing funding that's mentioned in the last paragraph. I didn't quite understand. This is for me. Is that still from that Backhilton in-house learning disability service budget line?
Sure. Answer that question. So, in regard to the number, it is a very small number of residents that we've got. We were keen to test the pilot and take the learning from that small pilot. In regard to the funding, I'll need to come back to you in regard to around the funding for that line.
Thank you. Okay. Not seeing any more hands? In which case, can we note the report and instruct Chief Officer to come back on the outcomes of the EMAR? Brings us to item 5.1, which is the paper on the National Care Service. So, Lord Fraser, is there anything you want to say before we're open to questions?
Yeah, just to offer a quick overview. As you'll see, the purpose of the report is to update to members on the progress of proposals for a National Care Service since the National Care Service Scotland Bill was initially published in 2022. As you'll see in the report, the government recently published draft amendments to that bill, which follows a period of consultation and co-design. And these amendments will be considered shortly by the Scottish Parliament's Health, Social Care and Sport Committee. Now, as part of that consideration, the committee in the Scottish Parliament issued a call for views over the summer, which we responded to as part of a joint response with the Chief Officers Group for Green City Council, and also in consultation with NHS Grampian, who submitted a response to views. The key elements of our response are set out in the report. As members can see, since 2022, there's been a significant shift in the thinking on the shape and form of a National Care Service. We're moving away from the initial concept of a new entity, which would not only have had responsibility for delegated functions, but would employ staff, own assets that are currently employed and owned by NHS Grampian and Aberdeen City Council locally. Instead, the current proposals would see an NCS consisting of 32 integration authorities across the country, following the local authority boundaries. And these would report into a national care board. And this has regularly been referred to as a shared legal accountability model. Fair to say that Aberdeen's been highly engaged in the process of consultation and co-design since the bill was published, and that's been enabled by the multi-agency National Care Service Programme Board, which I chair in Aberdeen. And we'd like to think that some of the engagement has helped to shape and influence the national approach, and will continue to play that role. And in terms of next steps, last dialogue with Scottish Government officials was that we might see draft amendments formally lodged with the Scottish Parliament later this autumn, but I would suggest that's very much subject to change, as I know discussions and dialogue at that national level. We'll continue to oversee the progress towards the NCS to ensure that, as far as possible, any risks identified and opportunities that are raised, and we'll keep the IGB up to date as the bill progresses.
Thank you for that. Any comments, questions? Is there?
Fraser for that update, also to the report. I'm a bit of a geek myself on parliamentary procedure, but for members and others watching who perhaps aren't so, and just to provide some context before I go on to the question itself, there have been reports that there are various stakeholders that are really concerned about the direction in which National Care Service is going, and you've highlighted some of those concerns in your report. And I think it would be fair to say, although all the responses haven't been published yet, that they are not isolated concerns. You mentioned that the Scottish Government would lay draft amendments or additional amendments for consideration by the Parliament at later stages of the bill. How do you see the consultation and dialogue process with the likes of Social Care Partnership and others across the country who are going to have to do the work of this on the ground, proceeding to accept, identify, mitigate some of these concerns before we get to the point where it's, I'm probably not phrasing this very well, but out of our hands, in the sense that parliamentary procedure takes over and does what it does later on in the bill. How do you see that developing in terms of what you're hearing from your conversation?
Yeah, okay, so in terms of the specific detail of the parliamentary process, section 4.3 attempts to kind of set that out in as plain English as I possibly can. But in terms of stage 2, that this is where we'll see the amendments come through to the Scottish Parliament from the Scottish Government, and they will be formally voted on before it goes to stage 3. And it's at stage 3 where the Parliament can decide whether or not to approve the bill as amended. I would foresee an opportunity for members of the public, relevant bodies, to further engage with another process of consultation before that final bill is put to the Scottish Parliament at stage 3. And that's, in terms of the work of the National Care Service Board in Aberdeen, will be ahead of the game so far as possible to ensure that we're aware of the relevant timescales and participate as appropriate. I think it's also fair to say that we're also making sure we're looking out with relevant national groups, whether it's Social Work Scotland, OSLA, SOLAS, Society of Local Authority, Chief Executives, and SOLAR, which represents the legal profession. We're trying to attempt not just to influence through our own group and with Aberdeen's performance, but also seeking where it's appropriate to do so to work through some of those other relevant networks across the country to help influence it. We've attempted to identify the risks as we see it around the National Care Service, and as I say, also the opportunities. And that register of risks and opportunities is reviewed quarterly by the NCS in Aberdeen to make sure it remains relevant to the changing context.
Very much, and I think I'd speak on our own behalf, but I say we're very supportive of the work that you do and very pleased that that engagement at all sorts of different levels is continuing, so that we try and get something that's going to be as beneficial as possible for everybody involved before the Parliament does what it does.
Okay, I've got Phil Mackey and then Sandra.
It's really just an observation, Chair. It's not really a question for Fraser. When the IJBs were established, some colleagues around the table will remember that there were significant discussions around the health improvement and public health functions that were transferred to the IJBs, and the consequences of those on local planning and commissioning of health improvement services. Given that government is now effectively reviewing elements of IJB functions, I think we do need to keep an eye on what happens with those health improvement related areas, whether they remain with the new integrated care boards or whether or not there is an element of transfer back either to health boards or to local authorities. I think it's one of those bits of detail that we do need to keep a careful eye on, because that might have an impact on the amount of preventative work and the commitment that we clearly in the City IJB are showing towards prevention, particularly around areas such as adult healthy weight management, amongst others.
I could be cheeky, Phil, and ask you a question. What would your preference be on that?
Well, I would actually prefer it to stay within the IJB, because in many regards, elements of prevention that we're very often thinking about tend to be in the primary prevention, so the avoidance. But actually, we've got an awful lot of work within the context of early intervention and in remediation, which are preventative outcomes that we want to see carried forward. But very often we don't think about them in those ways. The prevention of delayed discharges we'll discuss later on in the agenda is actually really an issue around prevention and preventative practice. So if we're not able to manage and maintain that focus on prevention, I think it does lessen our potential. But also, I think we shouldn't underestimate the power that we have with areas such as making every opportunity count, in looking at the way in which our interaction with children's services, the wider preventative work which avoids the need for health and social care practice, all of which actually come from that health improvement related set of functions. So I certainly will be watching regulation in particular as it comes out very carefully, to ensure that if there is to be a transfer of responsibilities, it handled smoothly. But my preference would be for it to stay here.
Thanks for that, Phil. Sandra?
Yeah, thanks very much. And I too welcome our involvement in engaging and shaping the future of a national care service, which we all agree in we need, but it's just the how and what we get at the end of the sausage machine. My question really is around we have general support for the Chief Social Work Advisor and National Social Work Agency, I know from the submission that we made. But my question is really around, and I suppose one of the groups that wasn't mentioned in your list of people that have been important was the trade unions, and I think I would just put that on the record that they I'm sure are involved as well. But is it still the case? I'm still not quite sure where we are with social work, and whether the workers in that are going to be staying with where they are now, or whether they're going to move to a national, or whether this national agency thing is a different kind of body. I'm just not clear in my head, and I don't know where we sit on that, or what the government's thinking. And it might be one of those areas that is still being fleshed out.
Yeah, I'll start and maybe pass over to Claire. So in terms of employment, social workers would still be employed by the relevant local authorities. And the National Social Work Agency's concept is to try and promote the voice of the social work profession and support with the social work profession's development needs. In terms of the specific detail and how it would operate, that's still to be fleshed out. And I know looking at recent papers going to COSLA, that's a priority for COSLA, is to try and tease that detail out, work with the Scottish Government to tease that detail out over the coming weeks. Claire, through Social Work Scotland, do you want to come in and add a bit?
Yeah, my understanding at the moment, David's right, the social workers will still be employed by the council. The social work agency was very much requested, right? But when you look at the Feely report, in terms of giving social work that equal footing in terms of that professional identity, so it's very much a training, development, professional body that obviously they're trying to create consistent social work support and development right across Scotland. So it would just be a governing body and advice and guidance rather than employing or directing.
Thank you. And I think my personal view is we're in such straitened times at the moment, Chair. I think it's to be welcomed that we're moving in the direction we are moving in, rather than the initial concept of setting up a whole new body and so on. So yeah, thank you.
Any more comments, questions? that's a fair point, Sandra. I think actually, I'd just like to pay tribute to both Fraser and his colleagues have done on this. It's kind of, I think when you look at the original Feely report, one of the things it said was integration hasn't worked as well as it could have done in general terms. I think here in Aberdeen, we've actually done pretty well. I'm not claiming credit for that. It's our staff who've done that. And I think part of the interaction that we've had with Scottish Government has been to say, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. So and it seems to be, fingers crossed, touching wood, we seem to be making some progress on that. So if there are no more questions and comments, we consent to approve the recommendations. Thank you very much. That brings us to item 6.1, the budget protocol. So I'll bring in Sarah Gibbon on this one. Sarah's online.
Hello, yeah. I do have a short presentation to kind of introduce the paper if the board's happy to see that. Yeah, just give me 2 seconds and I'll share the slides. I'm assuming it'll just pull through to the TV screen in your room.
Yep.
Can everybody see that?
Yeah.
Okay. So I put just a few slides together to give some useful background ahead of the consideration of the document itself. So as you can see, this diagram shows how our partnership budget is made up. We get contributions from NHS Grampian and from Aberdeen City Council of 274 and 135 million respectively. We also generate income largely through our contributing to your care policy of 19 million and receive 7 million in grants, for example, for criminal justice. And this slide here describes how we spend our budget. So you can see here that the largest portion of our budget is spent on commissioning with 164 million, then our hospital-based services 85 million and 78 million on staffing across all our services. For 25-26, the sum of our previously known budget gap as indicated in last year's medium-term financial framework and our newly identified pressures on next year's budget is 10.4 million. So far, we have identified 7.2 million of possible savings, which are being developed ahead of going for public engagement and consultation, and I'll touch on that a little more later. This means that we still have 3.2 million of options left to find for this year. So this slide now explains the rationale behind creating our budget protocol. As we all know, and was recognised in the Accounts Commission report, the financial landscape for IJBs and all public sector bodies is getting tougher and tougher. So when we couple that with our statutory duty to set a balanced budget each year, it's becoming more and more important to have those clear and collaborative conversations with all our stakeholders around the difficult choices we may need to make to achieve financial stability. We're hoping that this budget setting protocol will give us enhanced opportunities for engagement with Aberdeen City Council, with NHS Grampian, with the third and independent sectors and the people that we serve, including committing to undertaking formal consultation exercises annually. We hope it gives us early focus on developing the savings options in the first quarter of the financial year, which will allow us plenty of time to work collaboratively with all our stakeholders throughout the rest of the year. It means that we will ensure that integrated impact assessments are created as early as possible in the process and updated throughout, allowing for a robust and comprehensive consideration of the impacts of our difficult decisions. And it also gives us a structured and regular updating process for the IJB, ensuring greater oversight throughout the financial year ahead of the budget setting in the spring. So this year we've been working on kind of incorporating some of the elements of this protocol already. So we've been undertaking collaborative workshops with both with leaderships and with service teams to develop ideas for how we might deliver the savings required. And alongside this, we've also been developing the start of the integrated impact assessments, noting that we'll be working on these iteratively right up until the IJB approval of the MTFF in March. For some of our more complicated options, we're undertaking a more thorough process with dedicated project support to develop options appraisals to support our decision making. We will be going out for our kind of public consultation and engagement soon, and we'll be taking a multifaceted approach to this. So we'll have an overarching consultation survey. We'll be looking at kind of consulting on our budget in general alongside Aberdeen City Council, and also working alongside our strategic plan refresh. So we've got lots of consultation and engagement opportunities set up for that we'll be making use of. We'll be focusing on in-person opportunities where people already are. So, for example, events that are going on in the city or our high traffic areas. And we are also requesting that our senior leadership leads around specific options consider where they might need a more in-depth consultation and engagement, focusing on particular groups of people or people with lived experience. And that's to kind of allow to go into a level of detail that a more generalised consultation might not allow. So the next steps for the IJB. In November, we're hoping to bring a draft medium-term financial framework. And then in your February meeting, we'll have an analysis of the consultation and engagement activities, followed by, in March, the final medium-term financial framework and the fully developed savings plan. This will be kind of supported by briefings and updates as required. So, for example, we will give a briefing ahead of the consultation go live with more detail around exactly what we'll be doing and when. So I'll stop sharing my slides and just invite any questions either on the presentation or the content of the report.
Thanks for that, Sarah. Very clear presentation, very clear report. So thanks for that. Any comments, questions? Martin and Hussein.
Yep. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm very pleased to see the structure of this budget protocol, and I think one of the key elements within it is that consultation activity, that there appears to be enhanced engagement with senior leadership team, with other teams and so forth. But there's mention there of public engagement. Frankly, I don't think you can ever consult enough. But there's a very welcome plan there, and I'm just wondering if there's more detail on that. Because I think it's an opportunity to listen to the public, but also to share information about that £3.2 million gap, and how we talk together about addressing that. So yeah, I mean the council has had experience of a budget protocol. We're into the second year, and you're always refining the process. It can always be better. So can I just have some more information on the way that process will happen, and also on the timing? It's February, March for the public consultation. So yeah, thanks.
Of course. So there's a couple of points that I'll pick up there from your question. The first is we're working very closely with our colleagues in Aberdeen City Council to kind of draw on their lessons learned. So we've been meeting with those involved to kind of see how we can kind of bring our processes together and build on the experience of each other. I will be presenting a fuller paper on all the details of the consultation and engagement plan to our senior leadership team next week. And following their kind of opportunity to input into that, I'll share it wider with the board. But we've got a full range of online sessions, inline sessions. We'll have pages on our website, videos. I'm going to do a kind of recorded overview of the presentation I've just run through. And we'll be aiming to start parts of that on the 20th of October in line with the City Council's second phase of consultation, and that will run all the way from October through to just before the Christmas holidays, and we'll present the results of that engagement back to the IJB at the February meeting after it's all been sort of analysed. Apologies, was there any other parts of your question?
No, thanks very much for that. I think that point about lessons learned is really important, because we're always on this journey trying to find out the best way of listening to the various voices. I mean, I think I just got confused with the timeline, because there was mention there of February. March engagement, whereas you just said that, was it September to December, which I
So
think makes
yeah, October to December for the consultation engagement, and then we'll be bringing the results of that back to the IGB in February before the MTFF in March.
Thanks very much for that. It's really helpful.
Thanks. I think had to say next.
Thanks very much, John. And it's all right with yourself. I've got a few questions, but I'll take them one at a time, just so I don't overburden everyone. Thanks very much, Sarah, for the report and the presentation. I promised Martin and I didn't compare notes, but he stole my questions, which is probably fortunate for everyone. One of my questions is around the communications plan, because my understanding of the council's budget consultations exercise last year, the total turnout in terms of response was in the low single digits, which I'm told is pretty good for that type of exercise. But underserved communities, I think the figure was around 0.1%. And I freely admit I'm not the most diligent person when it comes to keeping up with my social media, and for a lot of the communities that are underserved or underrepresented, it will be the same, or there may be particular challenges in accessing that type of information. So I'm just wondering if you can give any detail, cognizant of what you've said about bringing a fuller plan in time. How are we going to get that message out to as many of our communities as possible, particularly those that might not be tuned into the website or X or either the network of choices?
Thank you, Hussein. So again, we'll be kind of taking a couple of approaches with this. So the first would be that we're going to be, again, working with the council and their lessons learned from previous years, to have those targeted kind of focus group sessions with people who might be underrepresented or have protected characteristics. We can also draw within the partnership on the Equalities and Human Rights group, that's a subgroup of our strategic planning group. And we'll also be taking, again, in-person consultation events to areas of high traffic, so places such as where our vaccinations are delivered, places where people kind of frequent more as well. So there'll be a three-pronged approach to kind of making sure that we're kind of considering those underrepresented voices.
Very much. I think just a couple of things that are probably already on your radar, but probably just to flag that. First of all, I'm assuming that somebody will be arranging facilities for our deaf colleagues who require BSL, and also for those who maybe require a quieter environment and a bit more time to go through some of this, because it's for someone who's never participated in such an exercise before, it can be quite complex. I know it was very welcome last year when senior officers took the time to come to some of the events. I think one of them was at the townhouse, I think, and came through and did that. But my second question is around consultation in general, because we've now got a situation which I agree with. We've got the council budget consultation process, and we've got the IJB budget. And I'm just wondering what considerations have been taken place in terms of the risk of inadvertent confusion, and not only in terms of who's dealing with what, but what services lie with whom, and so that we don't inadvertently confuse the people that we're trying to get feedback from, but also we don't end up with consultation fatigue with all of this happening at once, while still trying to get a very rich feedback.
Yeah, so again, this is where I think it's important that we're kind of undertaking our process in collaboration with Aberdeen City Council, because, to a member of the public, they see a public sector body with a duty to consult and engage and provide the services. They might not necessarily delineate between what's a partnership service, what's an NHS service, what's a council service. So by collaborating a bit more that way, hopefully we can kind of learn what's important to people no matter which services they're accessing. But in order to try to keep a little bit of the delineation between the different organisations, we're going to host the majority of our information on our website and provide links into the council one, so you're still getting that separated kind of brand identity. We're going to use the opportunity to kind of speak a little bit more about what are integration joint boards, how have they come into existence, and what are we trying to do. So again, it is quite nuanced, especially kind of, I guess, given public understanding of what the partnership is, but we'll try and play it out both ways, and hopefully end up in a better position.
I think it's really important what you just said there about actually improving our visibility. And I know governance structures can be dry and not particularly interesting for the majority of folk, but I think it is important that people understand what we do. And speaking for myself, and I'm sure there'll be colleagues that will agree with me, if there's anything we can do in terms of that visibility or a podcast or whatever it is to help get that message out there, we're only too happy to help. And my final request, which is not a question, is once you've got that full engagement plan, would it be possible to perhaps circulate scheduled events to board members?
Of course, yeah.
Just from myself, I think our biggest asset is listening to our staff, listening to the people that we serve. And I wouldn't mind dropping by one of these just to hear firsthand what people are thinking.
Excellent. And everyone would appreciate to see our board members there too. So that's mutually beneficial.
Thanks, Sarah. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. I've got Mark Burrell's hand and then Sandra.
Thanks very much, Chair, and thanks for the presentation, Sarah. I think it's very clearly set out. Just more a comment than anything else. I think that the early engagement and the developing the savings early on in the year is really very important. I think all too often we end up halfway through the financial year and then trying to get the budget under control. So I think that early engagement is really important. So I just highlight that as being a really important aspect to this protocol. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay, and then I've got Sandra next.
Thanks very much. Just following on from others really, about the consultation process, and I think there are lessons to be learned from the council's budget protocol that was carried out. And I think the big one is about how it's about managing expectation. And at the end of the day, we're managing cuts to services. Where we're trying to do more with less money, and that becomes quite a difficult process when the first thing you want to say is, well, why can't we either transform things a bit or can we not ask for more money? So I think there is, from the public's point of view, real there might be real engagement, but there sometimes is that layer above it, which is why are we being asked to manage down budgets rather than say what it is we really think is important. And I think the other thing that we don't do well enough anywhere on consultation is to feed back to those who we consulted what the outcomes are. And I think it can be very frustrating for people who do take the time and energy and effort to go and do a consultation, either individually or collectively, and then not really do anything about it, other than the comms that will come through either the press or social media. And I just think, I don't even know that we've got a resource that we can do that, because it is resource intense. But I just think that's the way to really engage and to build, because this is a process that both the council and Health and Social Care Partnership, it's a new process to try doing it this way. And then the proof will be in the pudding, because at the end of the day, the decision makers, do they actually listen? Do they actually take on board what the public has been said? Because in my experience, that's not always the case. In big organisations like this or Aberdeen City Council, we shall wait and see. So I might not be here at the February meeting when we see the consultation or we accept the budget. But all I can say, Sarah, is well done and good luck with it all, and look forward to positive outcomes. But watch out for a few bear traps along the way. I hope we'll be fine.
Thank you.
Wise words. Richie.
Yeah, thanks. And like others, just welcome the paper, welcome the approach. And I think anything we can do to make our budget planning processes more cohesive is a good thing to aim for. As resources get tighter, whether it's across IGBs, councils or NHS boards. And just on the back of that, I did wonder if this was something that we could share with other IGBs, and just in terms of that kind of collective learning and improvement, I think, in process. Certainly, I think that would be useful just to have that earlier discussion, earlier engagement as we've heard, but also perhaps just to make sure that we have some a process that's as slick as it can be in order to get to make us clarity in terms of the budget options. But I think it's been really good to share with other IGBs if that's not already been done. Right.
That makes complete sense, because we might be able to help some of the other IJBs, but also we might be able to steal some good ideas from them. So yeah, that sounds like a sensible suggestion. Any more comments or questions? Oh, yeah, Hussein?
Yeah, sorry, just one more from me. Sarah, it was really Sandra that prompted me to ask this question, because some of the public feedback from last year's budget protocol, just on the street discussion, was, why are we being asked about things which are not possible? And there was a feeling in some quarters that people were being asked to make choices or give their views on areas which were either statutory responsibility, so it's not something that we had the gift to do anything about anyway, or that we actually didn't have the resource to do anyway. So I suppose my question is, how closely will the engagement, in whatever form that takes, mirror the reality of what's within our gift to transform or change? And also what's not within our gift to do by legal statute.
Apologies, it went a little crackly at the end there, but for our consultation, all of the options that we put forward are kind of within our power, feasible to deliver at the moment. So there's nothing within our current scheme of options that wouldn't be deliverable if it's not a statutory duty or anything like that.
And maybe if I can add to that as well, I mean, one of the key elements for me around the conversation with various groups, members of the public, is to help us identify what the potential impact is. Some of these options help us work with us to identify what some potential mitigations make to the impact of some of the options. It may be that the consultation helps us to hone in on what the final options are, but I think a key task is also about helping to ensure that we can be clear with you representing options on what the potential impact is and what the potential mitigations may be to alleviate any negative.
Yeah. Any more hands? See any more? No, I think all the points that have been made around the table around the importance of consultation are absolutely spot on, because it's probably be consulting even in the good times, but now in a situation where, as in the past, we've been able to budget with a bit of anti-footwork, now up against having to take some hard decisions. So it's going to be quite important both to inform the public as to what we're doing and why we're doing it, and also to get their feedback to try and take them with us. So anyway, yeah, so thanks, Sarah. As I say, good paper, good presentation, very, very clear. So are we happy to approve the budget protocol? Thank you very much. Brings us to item 6.2, which is the annual performance report. I'll bring in Callum to introduce this one.
Yes, thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. Really presenting this on behalf of a wide number of who have contributed towards this year's planning report, and we're really seeking approval from the board to publish this, and also to instruct the Chief Officer to present this to both the City Council and NHS granting information. So you'll be aware that the scope of the annual performance report is really around the year 2 delivery plan, so the second year of delivery in the partnership's strategic plan. There is limited guidance from the Scottish Government about how this should be laid out, so we have very much built upon the previous approaches that we have developed to try and provide that level of consistency. This has very much been a collaborative approach, so we've engaged with a lot of key groups kind of throughout the development process, whether that be members through insight sessions, whether that be multi-agency groups such as strategic planning group, including public representation, or whether that be project leads, senior responsible officers, or individuals delivering the year 2 delivery plan activities. So what this has resulted in is quite a substantial document, but I believe that's indicative of the hard work that our colleagues have put in over the last financial year. As with the previous year, there is a misalignment between the reporting cycle and publishing of national indicators. So the national indicators and the MSG steering group indicators have only come out at the end of this consultation period, which is why they're not available in the report. Again, as with previous years, we would propose that if we gain approval to publish the report, we would then add in these figures once they're validated and upload them. The final thing just to say is at the moment we are proactively working on our dissemination plan, and members will have also inputs into this after recent insight session. Really what we're doing at the moment is essentially trying to prioritise what are the best approaches to try and get key messages out there and who might want to hear them. So we obviously appreciate that a lengthy document may not be the most palatable for different stakeholder groups. So that's something we're very proactively doing at the moment. I'll probably leave it there and I guess thank all my colleagues for inputting into this, and happy to take any questions or comments.
Okay, Martin.
Thank you. This is a really comprehensive report. It's really comprehensive. There's so much good work that's being reflected here. Well, there's an area that I wanted to question. And first of all, it appears that some of the statistics are not all there. Will there be a later version where we have the just trying to find it. There was statistics, comparative statistics, 23, 24 were not there. Page 136 and 137. Incomplete, and there's some really interesting information on current trends there. I think we would want to know what the figures for 23 are and 24.
Yeah, so these are the figures which I referred to when I was opening the paper. So these figures are, as with previous year, are only published later in the year. So I believe these figures have essentially come out in about the past week or so. And this is why, because of the reporting cycle, this is why they've not been included within this draft. So this is something that if we get approval from the board to publish this, then we can integrate these figures into the updated version of it.
That would be very much appreciated. Thank you. Because, for example, NI 17 is not a very favourable direction of travel for inspection, care inspection reports on the care inspection reports. So thanks for that. Could I also ask a second question? I'm not sure it's a question. Page 139 are the record on delayed discharge bed days for Aberdeen is remarkable. And just wanted to say thank you. They're clearly a very focused effort. Delayed discharges have got there's a lot of complexity around the care and the treatment that we for the next stage. And it's clear that there's very strong teamwork to find the right pathways for people to move on. And I think that obviously at the left-hand side of the graph, they are mainly rural areas which have their own characteristics. But I think that it is very much to be congratulated that as the result of the very strong, excellent teamwork, Aberdeen's doing very well. Thank you.
Any more questions or comments? Seeing any more? I think when you were talking about dissemination, what we're looking at there is an easy read version as well as the main report. But you can't do the easy read version until the main one. So are we, to say before I say, are we happy to approve the recommendations? Do we want to add to the recommendations, subject to, again, the stats that we're still waiting for? With that?
If that could be done, yes.
Yeah.
And perhaps get the short summary version when it's available, because it is easier to disseminate that through our own networks. And I'm not having a go at the big report. We need that, you need that level of scrutiny of what's going on. And
No, that sounds good. Alan's gonna have to do the work, and he's nodding, so he's nodding and smiling, so I think that should be absolutely fine. Okay, subject to those, we have to approve. Right, I now make it 11:24, and thinking we're nearly at our 90-minute shed, so I'm thinking we take a break now and resume at 25 to 12, and so that people have got a wee chance to stretch the legs, have a comfort break, and take a break now. Happy with that? Grand. We are now at item 6.3, which is the healthcare experience report, and it's up to Callum again.
Yes, hello again. So this is the care experience report presented to the IGB, and it's presented for noting. The care experience survey, one that's produced every 2 years. Really, the primary purpose of it is to understand our population's experience of receiving health and care services. It's something that's produced nationally, so it's across the country. The report is comprised of a similar structure to what we produced previously for the Integration Joint Board, whereby the first section is essentially a narrative account of what the plans are. And then the second section is really focusing in on the 5 key areas that require the greatest improvement. And it explains how some of the activities that we are undertaking locally should theoretically have a positive. There is one thing that I think would be helpful to draw the committee's attention to, and that is the demography of the individuals who chose to respond to this survey. The responders, or the number of responders, equates to approximately 1.5% of Aberdeen City's population. Of these individuals, 41% have no long-term condition at all. The majority of these individuals support to keep in very good health, and the majority of individuals are from the least deprived parts of the city from a socioeconomic perspective. So we do have to interpret the findings within this context, albeit they are helpful for long term of experience overall. I may defer to colleagues for if there are specific questions around particular service areas. Nonetheless, happy to take any questions or comments at this time. Thank you.
Question, Mr. Martin.
Thank you very much. On that last point, what can be done to improve the volume rate and the of participants? Because it is absolutely crucial to hear from people relevant, those with lived experience, those who most from health inequalities, but it doesn't sound like the group. Take part. Always good to hear voices and expressions, what can be done to improve that representativeness.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very good question. I think we do typically find that when we have national level surveys, there is always a particular part that do respond to this. Nonetheless, this is something which is produced every second year, so it is something which we do have sight of in advance. I think maybe for the next time, what we might want to consider locally is trying to be maybe linked in more with national colleagues, so that we have a good understanding about when this is going to come out. We can think about, is there potentially any planning that we can do locally in terms of maybe being a little bit more targeted. And we do have a variety of forums which already exist, which are designed to really reach out to the public. So we might want to develop maybe a more kind of targeted engagement approach for that moving forward. But I think that's a really important.
Thanks. Yeah, I completely agree, because I think we need to be as responsive as possible to all service users, and I think getting more accurate feedback and information from that wider spectrum will help us in making those decisions about healthcare provision. And there's we're trying to develop locality planning and health improvement that's relevant for local areas. So obviously hearing those voices from minority areas in particular, anything that can be done to develop that, so we can really make a difference with health movement, with health structure, will I think be helpful. That will be crucial. Thank you.
Okay, I'll now go to Sandra next, followed by Mark Warren.
Yeah, my question was really why do we do it every 2 years, maybe not every year? And is there any understanding of whether the same people do it every 2 years or if it's different people? I mean, I suppose the big picture for me is that the comparison is that things are not improving. And I mean, anecdotally, on a personal level, I would probably be in the category which is absolutely fine. But gosh, that's not what I pick up, particularly for some GP practices where people then have to go to different other parts of the city in order to get the service that they need, and some of them don't have a car or something to take them. So so really that's it's not terribly helpful. But that's really my questions at the moment.
I mean, I can begin to respond to some of that, and maybe to chip in. So I guess the first question, why every 2 years? I mean, I don't have an exact answer to that because it comes out from nationally. And my assumption is it is quite a resource-intensive undertaking from a dissemination collation perspective, and so as such, it's potentially a logistical reasoning for that. In terms of is it the same individuals that respond to this? Again, I don't have an exact answer. However, I do have an understanding that it's responded to anonymously. So I'm not sure it's something that we would necessarily be able to track at an individual level. However, I definitely have an understanding that there is a particular trend of the types of individuals that typically would respond to this sort of thing. So it is typically individuals from more affluent areas. It's typically individuals who keep in good health. So that's probably as far as we could get in terms of the understanding about who the respondents are. And I think in terms of the situation and in terms of how that compares to previously, I think I would just pick up on, whilst that that does appear to be the case in terms of findings. I think we've discussed a couple of points already in the board today, which I think are really, really important to provide some context to that. So we've spoken a lot about the financial challenges and having to make really difficult decisions about funding. We've spoken a lot about recruitment and retention challenges, staff sickness, and this sort of thing. So these are all factors which are very, very difficult for us to control, but they do directly impact upon how individuals experience services. So I think it's important to bear them in mind and take cognizance of that context when we're interpreting this, particularly making comparisons on a year-on-year basis. Alison, do you want to sort of?
Yeah, if I could just add to that, that's okay. Callum's absolutely right in terms of the reason why it's every 2 years. It is nationally driven, so we don't necessarily have a complete influence over when it's done, but I do know that it's quite a lengthy process. They normally survey between at the last end of a calendar year and the best part of the year before we get the results. So I think they think they could go straight into another one. So that's the reasoning behind that. What they do is they take a random sample of GP practice lists. So we're not involved in who they sample, and they are very adamant that it will always be a random sample as opposed to being targeted. But we do have regular things. I'm a member of the Strategic Planning and Performance Officers Group, and there are regular discussions at that, because we're not alone. The points you're raising here in relation to the particular survey are being raised in other health and social care partnerships as well. So there are ongoing discussions, and we're trying to influence a change in that, because as you said earlier, and Councillor Berg said as well, you know, we really do want to hear from the people who have long-term conditions, who are living in deprived areas. You know, we really need to hear their voices. The survey is perhaps not the best way to do that. And I don't know if you recall, we did our own local survey a few years ago, but that's which we are able to influence more and can target. But that is labour intensive and costly. So you know, it's not something that we were able to repeat. But I'll absolutely take your point on board, and see if there's any influence that we can have to change things for future.
I mean, just to respond, I suppose it doesn't give me a huge comfort, and I kind of hope that you know, our services are not perhaps based, they won't be based totally on this kind of a survey, but it you know, it's maybe useful to have because we haven't got anything else, which is one way to look at it. But you know, if we do have a better, and it does strike me that in this day and age, it does seem extraordinary that we can't do a better survey of our local services and do it locally. And it's maybe something that just doesn't work very well from a national top-down approach, but it is what it is, I guess, and interesting enough to read. But with all those caveats, you begin to lose confidence in what it's saying and what it can achieve as a bedrock to, you know, to make decisions on. I would be less inclined to hope that happened.
It's only one of a number of tools that we use. Obviously, our annual performance report gives us a lot of information. The national indicators, the MSG indicators, and indeed our services on a regular basis get feedback from the people that they see. So this is just one of a number of tools that we use to understand what people are thinking about ourselves.
And the question my colleague would like to ask is, could a cause of the reducing satisfaction levels in Aberdeen be people's lack of understanding of how to access the range of primary care services, which I thought was a good way of putting it. So that's really Councillor Bonsel's question around that. I don't know if there's any particular answer you could.
Yeah, I mean, the one answer that I would give, and you know, I think you gave a really helpful overview in terms of a number of caveats that are really important to look at within this. A lot of these questions are very broad. And what that means is that the response that people give to them is influenced and impacted on by a variety of different factors. So you're absolutely right. People's awareness and understanding of services could be one such reason, but there's likely a variety of other factors in play. We spoke about recruitment, we spoke about finances, we spoke about the actual sample of individuals. What is not possible for us to do within this is to really be able to distill that down as to which one of those is the strongest, which is why I think in terms of what Alice was describing, a lot of the work that we do locally, trying to work with populations, is perhaps a more effective way for us to get kind of a really good understanding about what are the biggest barriers that we see, and then how do we address them based on that.
Okay, I've got Mark probably wants to come in.
Thanks very much. I think picking up on some of the comments that I've just listened to there, I think this is a tool that we're going to have to use. These are people that are interacting with our services. We've seen a decrease from 65% down to 60%. We're well below the average of 69% for Scotland. So I think we need to take these seriously. These are people that are interacting with our services. Just drilling down to some of the details of them and thinking about our digital strategy going forward, I noticed that some of our first interactions with primary care or with GP practices is with telephone consultations. Virtually none of it is with near-me video consultations, when we know that the quality of a near-me video consultation can be superior to a telephone consultation. I wonder why we haven't been able to utilize that technology more. Is that infrastructure? Is that just a difference in what our general practitioners want to do? And also, I suppose the other aspect that I would pick up on is that choices were not given to patients on how they wanted to have their first consultation. It was 57% of patients were not given a choice about their first consultation. So, drilling down to some of the details of these figures, it is a little bit concerning from my point of view, but I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Yeah, I think with all the caveats that Callum has mentioned, it's really difficult to interpret in the detail that you're looking for, Mark. The near me thing is definitely not used as much as it was, particularly in COVID, when it was obviously our mode of choice. But I think a lot of practices are understanding that actually in the use of telephone or actually pictures or actually in flesh, it seems to be the most efficient use of time. There are some digital difficulties, so patients are, it's not easy. I think sometimes for patients that have the right technology to do the near-me consultations, it does happen, but much more rarely. And certainly from my own personal clinical point of view, if I would prefer to see them in person than a near-me, because my other option would be a telephone consultation. So it just doesn't quite fit in, maybe like it used to, where you were actively trying to protect the patient and the member of staff through COVID from potential cross-infection. But at the moment, you don't have that now, so you would favour to see them in person or to be able to on the telephone. So I think that's probably what you've seen, not Scotland.
So you want to come back? Yeah, please. I really don't see the difference between near me and telephone. Okay, a telephone consultation, you're just talking to the patient the same way as you are a video consultation, and we miss out on some of the cues that you might get from body language, I must admit. So maybe it's a personal hobby horse of mine, but I can't necessarily see that telephone's any better than near me. I see them on a par, or near me being slightly better, but that's a thing from, I say, a personal point of view. But I think that with the caveats that are there, I still think that when we surveyed these patients, their satisfaction was really going down rather than up in most of the categories that I could see. So I think we need to work on that. Hopefully the GP visionary work will help us to improve that. So thank you.
I've got two questions. Firstly, to yourself, Callum, thank you very much to you and your team for the report and putting that together for us and going through it. I just want to understand, I suppose, a little bit, and it partly picks up on Sandra's question, if I may, on the mechanics of how this works. I understand this is a national survey. I understand that there's random sampling. In terms of increasing the uptake rate, is that currently entirely out with a gift to do anything with? So it's entirely nationally driven, and it basically lands where it lands, and somebody hopefully picks it up, and that's the end of the line. Or would there be an opportunity to involve, and this may well be what we're referencing in terms of lessons learned for the future, some of our third sector organizations who would be able to target this at some of our more underrepresented communities, and certainly from a disability perspective, some of our third sector organizations would be able to provide that more tailored support that many may need to be able to complete this in the first place, which would see depending on the current method of distribution, may in itself be a barrier to entry. That's it.
So, do you want me to take that one first? Yeah. So no, really good question. And well, I think there are a couple of things that we could do. So, in terms of the national picture, I think we're not alone. Other IGPs will have the same situation whereby they'll have a particular demography that will have responded to this. It'll be probably quite a small sample of the population, and it may not be representative of everybody. Alison mentioned we have national forums, for example, such the Strategic Planning Performance Officers Group, excuse me, whereby we socialize and we share some of these challenges that we're facing. So we do have the opportunity to use forums like that if us and colleagues within other IJBs are experiencing something similar, then we can think about, well, how can we potentially as a collective voice, send that up the chain, for want of a better phrase, to think about how do we influence that national picture, I guess, recognize that, all of us as a collective will have a much stronger voice than any one individual by ourselves. So I think from a national perspective, that's something which we can certainly do and certainly explore. I think in the absence of that, however, then we do have the opportunity to, as I mentioned before, think about, right, well, if we're looking at this from a local perspective, if we're assuming that nothing changes from a national perspective, then how might we want to go about that? How might we want to approach that? And I think you've done a really, really good job of identifying some really, really key partners and who will be fundamental in helping us shape that to try and make sure that we get as representative a group of people as possible. So I don't think it's one or other. It's probably both and in this situation, and hopefully that can improve the responsiveness moving forward.
Thanks, Callum. I'm really grateful for that. But my second question, I'm taking liberties if I may, is perhaps one for Mark, but also for Caroline, regarding the Near Me. And it's just a curiosity that came to me as a bit of a techie myself. I just wondered, thinking longer term, and there's somewhere else on the agenda where we're going to talk about tech-enabled care and so on. I just wondered in practice just now, and I take your point, Caroline. I know folk myself, telephone versus, I'm more of a Near Me person myself. Some folk prefer telephone, some folk prefer other methods. But thinking into the future in terms of upskilling the population as a whole, as we move to a more digital way of doing things, is there currently a practice to signpost people to community organizations or ECDL, what used to be ECDL, the driving license for computers that was running a while back, or some other way of directing people to support that would give them more confidence in using this? If it's something they've never used before, there's obviously a bigger challenge that I accept. I think Sandra mentioned in terms of the access to technology in the first place. But is that something we currently do, or is that something we can look at as part of future planning?
I don't know what, when you say is it a practice, you don't literally mean a practice. Like
No, I think is it current practice? So somebody comes along and says, no, I can't do this because.
Oh, yeah.
Do we currently say, well, okay, how can we support you? Here's a place, or here's an organization, or here's a voluntary scheme, or here's something that would give you the support that you need, because it's obviously not within the gift of our own resources for us to say, we will come around and help you to use this.
So all practices will have a Near Me facility. It will be there, and it comes with instructions. I don't know if you've ever used it, but I've used it at secondary care consultation, and it does come with a set of instructions to help you. And so, but apart from that, I don't think there is a way that I know. Mark probably uses it a lot more. And then something I was just going to mention as I'm reflecting on the question earlier was it's more time consuming, and I guess in practice we've spoken a lot about we've got to make sure our population understand what we are able to deliver rather than what we like to deliver. But actually, I can 40 phone calls, or I could have 20 Near Me consultations, and the knock-on effect of that. So it's the wants and the needs, and that both sides in terms of the delivering care and also the patients wanted to choose. But they are a bit more. It is a bit more time consuming and very difficult often to run to time if you have appointments, and then it gets complicated. But I bet Mark maybe understands better the Near Me process because he'll use it a bit more.
Thanks very much. I'll come back. I think you're correct, Caroline. It is more time consuming. There's no doubt of that. I suppose then it's the quantity versus quality argument that we could always get into. I think that Hussein, the irony is that most of the directions that we give people are to go online to learn how to do it, and if you don't go online very easily, then it's going to be quite difficult. So it's slightly ironic that we do it that way, but we do try and signpost and give as much information as possible for patients. And actually, the vast majority of patients that I interact with on a video consultation or near me consultation do it very simply. I think they learned a lot during the COVID pandemic. So hopefully that helps.
Thanks very much. That's really helpful context. Can I also say that comparator that you give purely in terms of time between one mode and the other is really helpful in terms of understanding potential pros and cons of one versus the other. So thank you very much for that.
John, could I just?
Yes, yeah, of course.
Thanks. Just to respond to a couple of things, just first of all, to go back to the how can we increase the participation, if you like, in the survey. One thing I think that we probably can do locally is to make sure we know the timing of when the survey comes out and do some promotion on that locally, including the third sector organisations that you mentioned that could possibly support people. So that was one thing that I wanted to see from earlier on. And I've now got what was the last bit we were talking about?
Near me.
Oh, near me. Sorry. That's my age. What I wanted to mention as well is part of our Stay Well, Stay Connected programme. There is an aspect in there where we support people who are digitally included to access support to enable them to help access things like Near Me. But I think probably what we could do more there is perhaps link up with the GP practices to make sure that they are aware that that's there. So if somebody does come to them and say, I actually can't do that, the practices have somebody to link over.
Just to support Mark, really, we have a survey, 3,000 people from Aberdeen City have taken the time to come. We have an obligation to listen.
The more. Yeah, John, it's been a very helpful discussion, and I think it's just to provide assurance to the board that we absolutely will have due regard to the results of the survey, notwithstanding the caveats, as Ken's just highlighted there. People have taken the time to complete this for us, and there's a summary of the response, post-response in the document. I found the discussion between Caroline and Mark an interesting one, and I think it just symbolises some of the discussions and that we're going to have over the years to enable us to become a more sustainable service. And we will have to get into those tricky discussions around changing practice, perhaps taking on more risk as we seek to try and balance risk as best we can. On the digital front, I'm the SRO for the digital promotion GP visioning work. And I'll certainly be looking to try and put together not only the results from this survey, but also looking at Greenshire and Murray as well, and having a look at how the digital GP visioning can perhaps start to address some of the themes that are arising.
Any more? I'll just chip in with a couple of comments, which are, I mean, Callum alluded to it, that when we had the budget discussion, we saw the Board of Scotland saying increasing financial pressure, that's going to have an impact. We had also around the budget discussion, we had the discussion around how do you reach the people in the less affluent areas. Certainly talk to officers of the council. Pretty much every consultation that the council does gets most of its responses. People in more affluent areas, relatively few responses in the less affluent areas. So no surprise, I think that the point's been made that we do need to take note of what's been said here, but at the same time to talk with our staff general practice care generally doing a tough job in challenging circumstances. So to feel that we're having a go at pointing the finger because they do a tough job. I think some of it, to an extent, is talk personally now. Some of it is to do with personal preference, because I've got lots of friends who say, "I to get an appointment and I only saw the nurse. This isn't right," or "I got an appointment and it was on the phone. This isn't right." My last consultation with a nurse practitioner over the phone, it was absolutely fine, but expectations. Yeah. Okay, so can we note the report? Take note of also the assurance that we've had from Alison Fraser that this will be looked at and noted, moved on. Nothing to see here. It's kind of we'll address. Okay. Right, so that brings us on to 6.4 is discharge without delay. It's okay to take time off from bricklaying. If you look at the health care partnership website, I'm also bricklaying.
Thank you. So this paper relates to discharge without delay, and it's really for your information to note the content, and also that there will be a regular report then going to Clinical and Care Governance Committee, and similarly there will be an action plan produced for mental health and learning disability, and that will be before you at the next IJB in November. So you will note at section 4.4, the target per city is relative to the delay numbers that we've had back on the 13th of May. That's the baseline, which for us equates to 45 people. It's 20.8 per 100,000 population. So when this report was prepared, we were sitting with 62 delays. We're actually at 56 today. So we are seeing some improvement. We are unable to share with you the Scottish Government figures for all partnerships because that is confidential information. But for your information, we are performing well comparatively. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions on this one? Good, Christian?
Yes, thanks very much. Sorry about that. I can't hear properly online. It's not so easy. But I caught the comment, and it's maybe because of the pop-up demonstration regarding technology-enabled care plan for early September for clinician. I hope that went through and that maybe helped to reduce it to 56. My question is more around the main cause of the increase, what we've seen. I see that on page 193, which is 7 of the report. Something that I'm used to at COSLA meeting is to hear about the challenging especially for those with complex needs who fall under adults with incapacity when moving someone out of hospital without legal status in place. So I just wanted to know how we are. Have we made, I know that COSLA has, but have we made ourselves a call regarding the national campaign on power of attorney? And first of all, my first part of the question is that really part of the increase that we've seen, and if it's that important, how much are we making to let know the power to be to inform that campaign and trying to push for this to happen?
We meet regularly. We meet on a weekly basis with the Collaborative Response and Assurance Group, the Scottish Government, where we discuss the delays and the reasons for them. The delays that we're experiencing are for a number of reasons, and you'll recall we have a reduction in interim beds now as a result of the financial pressures that we face. What we do have is a strong number of people who are what we would call AWI, adults with incapacity. We are working very closely with other local authorities and other partnerships to look at what they've done around about those things, because for statutory reasons we're unable to move people and who have incapacity until such times as guardianship's in place, which can take extensive periods of time. That certainly is one factor, but there are other factors also. It's becoming more difficult to place people with challenging behaviours, particularly where we're working with nursing homes who perhaps have lower tolerance for that. And there really are, there are many reasons that contribute to the delay that we experience. Claire, I don't know if you want to come in on the back of any of the social work pieces that you're working on. Yeah, I'll pick up, and I think I said this at the last IGB. There is this political targeting, but it's a movable feast. So we got down as far as mid-30s, and then within the last couple of weeks it's increased, and that is due to the complexity. We've got a lot of people who are waiting for care homes. We don't have care home places, or if we've got care homes paused because of issues or outbreaks. So there is such huge implications, but there's a lot at play as well that can influence on the figures. So we are, as Casey, there's a huge piece of work. We need to really look at the people who are waiting for care homes. I personally don't feel anybody should be going to a care home from hospital unless it is absolutely necessary, and that's on the trajectory. So it's about what can we do to get those people home, working with our families, doing things differently. We can put in tech. Absolutely, we're looking at with a tech lens of getting people home, especially for those who require overnight care. Can we have overnight remote monitoring, looking at all this kind of things? But one of the key things we need to do is to work really closely with our colleagues in acute, because getting totally from the point of admission, being around that conversations with families and the discharge planning, we need to be, I feel, ahead in terms of more complex cases at the point of admission rather than the point that they're medically fit for discharge. So huge amounts of work, but as I say, it's a movable feast. We could be right back down next week. We could be right back up again. So, but just to note that a lot of the authorities, because we're in the very low, they're split into 3 categories. In Aberdeen City is in the low category in terms of our figures. Those that are high have done a lot of work and they're starting to see the impact. But to be honest, that's work that we have been doing for years anyway. So it's not like we can taken huge improvements because we've been doing that all along. That I think there's different things we can do in terms of getting people home to assess them, not going to care homes, and as I say, working really closely and building that relationship with our acute colleagues in terms of who's put on the delayed discharge list and looking at point of admissions. I think it's fair to say that the increases that we have seen is consistent with the rest of Scotland, so we're not an outlier in that regard. I'll also add that in terms of the AWI delays, we have approached Scottish Government, so we're working with Scottish Government and Health Improvement Scotland in terms of improvement plan for AWI delays along in LD and mental health. And that's something we had a meeting with Scottish Government last year because they wanted to know why our figures were so low. So we've done a lot of work anyway, but we're also working with them about even that we can improve it even more, that nobody is delayed because of their capacity issues. Does that answer your question, Councillor Haller?
Yeah, thanks very much for your very comprehensive answers. I still think that, yes, last year we were much lower, and yes, the Scottish Government did use us as an example, and now we are back with the fall with everybody else. So I wonder if we can use that to make changes for, making sure that we rely ourselves over local authorities to do this. A last question will be about vocabulary. Action plan for discharge without delay. What if it's written this and an action plan to tackle delayed discharge? Is it just a change we made in the vocabulary recently? Is it only us who made it, or the rest of the local authorities are framing it a different way?
Referred to as discharge without delay for national consistency. So we will refer to delayed discharge locally, but the official term would be discharge without delay.
Thank you for that.
Okay, Christian? Got Phil Mackey next.
Thank you very much. In part, I just want to echo the comments that Claire's just made about the importance of we manage the hospital back door as much at the front door and before we get to the front door as during the time when somebody is in hospital. And I think we have to almost get that as a truism for all of our thinking. Equally, we've just had some discussion around the nature of discharge, the nature of digital supports. The digital supports can work as well before admission to do necessary monitoring and support for individuals, particularly where there is risk of frailty. The knack for us is to be very serious about that prevention of admission as a means of major protection of delay at discharge. And I think that requires us to think quite hard, not just about that pre-hospital phase, but also active aging and addressing frailty much earlier within people's life courses than we do at the moment. Something I've said before in this meeting, and it's something I'll probably have to say again, but we really do need to be in a different place to actually deal with discharges that are delayed. But fortunately, the actions taken to protect the hospital front door will help us with those delays that still are outstanding.
On that, or that's right.
Yep, just a question. I wonder what proportion, if any, of the delayed discharges are due to delay in providing care for somebody going to their own home.
So we work very closely with Chronic Care Consortium and Wanningford Care. So actually our rates for care at home are quite minimal because we are always we meet every day to see if we've got delayed in hospital. For those waiting for care, we have Chronic Care Consortium closely linked to the hospital. So we've seen it used to be quite high. We've turned it around, and for care very minimal. It's care homes, I think we're seeing at the moment that is the issue, and that's why we need to, and Phil's right, we absolutely are doing work to stop people going in the first place. Because my professional view is we should be focusing, that's who we should be putting our focus, to stop people going into hospital, rather than then always firefighting at the other end. So if we work with the hospital to stop going into care homes and try and get people, I think we'll start to see significant number. And the reality is these, the people we're talking about discharge without delay. So it's getting people onto their next, home or wherever they're going as soon as possible. So they're not even becoming delayed in hospital. But we're dealing with very complex, high acuity needs, and sometimes we have to think what is safe for that person. And sometimes going home without significant amount of care, it's just safe. But there is nobody on the list today who is awaiting their partners.
My question's been asked already. It was around demographics and complexity.
Okay, any more? Not seeing any more hands. In which case, can we agree recommendations? Thank you very much. And brings us on to 7.1, which is the Digital Innovation Programme. Getting a presentation from
let's give them an opportunity to kind of see it. Yeah, we've got the paper before us at item 7.1 and 12. It would be helpful if we'll just complement that with presentation. So to assist me today, we've got Barbara Dunbar, Bain from our social work team, Faulkner from digital team, and to the program manager for digital. I'll shortly set out context to the work, and then on to Kate will set out the digital vision for Aberdeen and how the social care partnership can play its part in that with City Council and NHS Grampian, as well as other partners. We'll then take a look at the digital proposals that colleagues have developed alongside Microsoft for members' consideration today in business case. And then we'll look at the governance arrangements as well that would support the delivery of these initiatives. We'll also touch on the outline business case, which is appendix 2, and putting up consideration. So we move on to the second slide and just draw us back to the Integration Joint Board strategic plan. Technology, as you can see, is set out as one of our enabling qualities. And under technology, the partnership's been working on a set of digital projects. Now, in addition to that, we've been engaging with Microsoft for several months, building on their successful contribution to the City Council's transformation programme, including the creation of Dynamics 365, which is a system that seeks to bring all customer data together into one platform. Alongside that engagement with Microsoft, at its budget setting meeting in March this year, IGB agreed to earmark over £5 million of its reserves for potential investment into digital innovation. Sarah touched on the savings gap early on this morning, and I think it's fair to say that there will inevitably be options across service lines, and there will be a corresponding impact on service lines. But it's important that we seek to mitigate that with transformation to help enable a more sustainable footing to service delivery in the future, and this is what also from review today seek to do. So moving on to the next slide, following the extensive engagement with colleagues from the partnership, Microsoft and other providers, we're now in that position to present to the members of the report with one full business case, which seeks approval for funding the development of a social work practitioner application and a home care commissioning portal. And we've also got your consideration outline business case in respect of technology-enabled care, which of course has come up a few times today, and we're seeking your permission to develop that to a full business case. So before we look at those opportunities in a bit more detail, just going to invite Craig Faulkner at the stage just to set a bit of more context around how digital is evolving in Aberdeen, how we see it further evolving, and our potential.
Thanks, Race, for the introduction, and thanks everyone today for being invited along. So I'm Craig Faulkner. I'm the Service Manager for the Digital Office within Aberdeen City Council. So there's a lovely picture in front of you, but probably won't be able to read some of it, especially if you're in the room. So I'll try and walk you through what Aberdeen City's vision is. So starting at the top left there, we've got the resident. And I suppose it's been a theme today. It's really interesting to kind of hear all the sort of challenges that happen within the partnership. And it's all really relevant to this sort of vision, which is as a resident or a citizen or customer, however they're classified within a particular area. We have an issue with sometimes people getting access to services, then being able to find the services that they have. And it'd be great if they could just log into something or pop into one of the centres or ability and see what services are there for them. So an example I might give of that is, as a sort of large city, we have people that come into our city every day, and they will get in touch with the NHS and the council to seek services out. At that point, they're starting to tell us things about themselves, but we're not then linking them to potentially other things that we offer within those services. So, for example, someone moved into the city today. They may have kids, for example, as part of that. They might want to know where their school is, how they go about registering for that, or how can we help register for it. They could also, based on information, be available for certain services that we have. And another example of that, they may want to know where their nearest doctor's surgery is so that they can register against that. So this is all part of trying to deliver a way of gathering that information for citizens. They don't have to keep repeating themselves in terms of registering for multiple portals. They don't have to keep on trying to retell us that stories. We can try and bring them together and provide those services for them. Whether that's in person, as I say, in contact centres, it doesn't matter. The fact is that we can allow them to digital stream. It's just whatever they're able to do and how they're capable to do that. In terms of the next one here, we have the partners. So we've kind of highlighted 2 partners, but there's obviously lots of different partners, businesses that integrate within Aberdeen City. But we've got there the NHS, the police examples of that. Again, in terms of the information that you NHS, there's a lot of information that could potentially be shared as part of a process. Obviously, the right governance needs to be in place, the right people need to be involved within that process. But ultimately, if it streams from one service to the other, then that's something that's there. So there will be more comments on that today in terms of the commissioning apps, in terms of things like the tech-enabled care that we've spoken about already or touched on. And that's a good example of various different services getting together. There's different things that they need to have, and it's making sure that we've got the right underpinning infrastructure from a technology perspective to allow that received and managed. The next one that we have there in terms of the picture is obviously the council staff and the teachers examples they would have in terms of capturing that information, the data that they have to manage proactive decisions, looking at those processes, single views of residents, students, or business or assets. So bringing all that useful information together where it's appropriate, where it should be governed, where it should be managed. So looking at that piece, obviously we've got the executive team within the council, so looking at those data-driven decisions that they need to make, making sure they have the right things. Again, today, we've been listening to the conversations around where's the best place to put that care, where's the best place to provide those services. And again, this is underpinning in terms of obviously third-party partner venues, so basically vendors within that we already use council and NHS services. So how do we get the information that we need back into our systems? We can then do that. So things like connectors, APIs, making sure we've got the right design profiling when we're taking in new packages to make sure that we can manage that. And then there's that underpinning tech and operations part, which is that kind of Internet of Things, all the sensors, again, tech-enabled care, whether that's streetlight sensors, flood sensors, damp sensors in homes. There's a multiple things. We spoke already about that prevention piece, being proactive rather than reactive. A lot of this is about how do we measure that? How do we then start to put those things together to say, actually, we potentially have an issue here that we want to get right people. So to make sure that we have all the technology that underpins that. If I just move to the next slide now. So this is a sort of maturity model around where we're at from a digital vision. So it kind of highlights the kind of 4 main places that you can be in now. Within Aberdeen City Council, I think we're between sort of transactional government and service-centred government at the moment, with an aspiration to move to that intelligent government-led. So examples of the transaction government we've still got skills that have been brought forward, developed to make sure that we maintain the right platforms. We've still got budgets allocated by agencies, but not outcome, and that's a really important one in terms of that. And we've still got connections to transactional services that are operating within their own isolation, and that's what we want to bring forward to that sort of centred government as a sort of home. That then leads to us being intelligent led to move forward into that. And finally, if I just push you to get busier with these diagrams, go forward. So this is just a little bit about the how part. So it's great saying all these things, and what does that actually mean, and how do we actually do those things? So a lot of that centres around 4 main areas, which is the customer, the partners, in this case Aberdeen City Council, and the things that technology underpins it. So examples of that, we've got our multi-channels that people get in touch with us, whether that's social media, whether that's person, whether that's bots that potentially support some of those services, take some of that demand away. If we've got race processes, why can't someone interact with an AI-generated bot as an example when they're trying to find out more about our services, so that can help navigate them through to get the right services that they need, rather than then having to go through. When I started the council, it's all about the Yellow Pages approach. So you go into the Yellow Pages and find the right service. It then shifted into the website approach, which again was only the replication of some of that in terms of good services. What we're now trying to do is change that front door. So that's looking at those web app channels, whether that's within the contact center, whether it's within our core website, and then looking at our partners. So we've got things like KI numbers, etc., that we've already started to share and manage through things like the Dynamics 365 portal, which allows us to kind of verify and validate information around the people who use those platforms. We've got M365, which is obviously key in terms of how to deliver services. And then in terms of the analytics, our back office, we've got things like Power BI, and all of this generates into that center diagram in terms of that decision engine. We can get a lot of information to gather. It still needs professionals to actually interpret it, make sure that they're viewing on it, but we can help get those decisions to the right people. And then the last part there, that things, just examples of things we talked about already in terms of sensors, technical here. So I'll pass you back to Fraser just to with the next point. Thank you.
That's great. So I set out the strategic context there. Craig's given us an insight to the vision for digital in Aberdeen. And I guess before passing over to Barbara and Nicola, just a bit of an insight into the process we went through to identify the two initiatives within the full business case. As I said, we spent a number of months with Microsoft as they looked at the strategic plan, looked at our aspirations, reviewed challenges to us delivering the aspirations within that. And from that, we developed a number of different initiatives that could be taken forward. And we then prioritised that based on complexity to implement and also have regard to the impact that initiative would have. And it's from that prioritisation process that we've developed the therapy that you see on screen, social work practitioner application and home care commissioning portal. And then towards the right of the screen under phase B, you see some other initiatives there, which would not quite in phase A, perhaps because lesser impact or greater complexity to deliver. So in phase A, those are the initiatives covered in the full business case set out in Appendix 1. And then phase B incorporates the Appendix B guideline business case for technology-enabled care. And what we're seeking your permission for today in terms of that outline business case is to really tease out the funding approach and looking at the return on investment around the connected care, which incorporates the technology-enabled care element. Before we talk about that tech case, I'm going to pass over now to Barbara and Nicola just to talk us through social work practitioner app, home care commissioning portal, what it does, what some of the benefits are.
Okay, I'm going to start. My name is Nicola McLean. I am one of the service managers. So you can see on the slide the kind of it's going to allow our staff to record their conversations with service users. We'll be able to record them offline as well if they don't have an internet connection. And we've been assured this will produce some kind of high-level transcripts, which can then be transferred over to our recording systems and assessment formats. One thing we've done throughout the process is liaise with operational staff because obviously their feedback is vital in the success of this. So operationally, the feedback that we've had that will be beneficial using this app is it's going to allow the practitioner to focus on good quality conversations without the barrier of the book or laptop. It's not going to interrupt the flow of the conversation, which means it's more natural and it should improve the accuracy of the information recorded. The service user can review for accuracy much quicker, so they're not waiting for a worker to go away, type the information up and bring it back to check, and relying on their memory to confirm the accuracy of that documentation.
we can upload it immediately to the system, which minimises the risk as well. Obviously, the vision for Adult Social Work in Aberdeen is based on prevention and early intervention, and I think it's fair to say in recent years we've been more crisis focused, we're more reactive than proactive. The balance is kind of tipped one way. And that's due to more numbers of service users with more complex care needs, with budget constraints and everything else. So we all know the challenges we have in making the switch from primarily responding to crisis to that genuine early intervention and prevention. And the biggest barrier has been staff capacity and time. And I think this app will be, to be blunt, a game changer in freeing up the time for staff to benefit those that we serve and protect, to make this kind of much needed shift. You know, we've had a lot of examples lately of self-neglected boarding, for example. This is going to allow capacity to be freed up to build relationships and rapport and spend that time with our service users, and hopefully then in turn preventing serious harm or escalation of harm. So that's the app. I will pass you to Barbara. Well done.
Thanks, Nicola. Hi, I'm Barbara Dunbar. I'm also a service manager within care management. The second concept we're asking you to consider today is an extension to the Dynamics 365 app to create a care commissioning portal. The portal will enable a more streamlined approach to securing care certificates. So our current system is heavily reliant on manual processes. It requires approximately 11 interactions for each care search that we add to our system. And with that comes an increased risk of human error. So the portal will reduce this number to 5 interactions, meaning the practitioner's time could be freed up, which would increase the amount of client-facing time and ultimately improve productivity. It would also enable the providers to access the request queues. So that means they would have a real-time access to the care searches we're looking for. It's a secure system, and they could go on and accept or decline packages immediately, and that information would transfer through to our practitioners today. It improves the visibility of status requests. So appreciate from the conversation today, quite often the requests we're looking at are quite complex in terms of how we meet people's needs. So quite often that means a lot of to and fro in terms of information. So this would allow that to happen in real time. It would free up capacity for the providers themselves in terms of the level of staff time they require to manage care searches. And it would enhance their understanding of the level of need in each locality across the city, meaning that the care delivery can be planned in a more efficient manner and again, release time and capacity. And finally, it could aid future planning. It has the potential to provide improved data, trend identification and mapping demand for care, which could influence future service design and resource allocation.
So the outline business case for technology enabled care, you know, it's quite simply, you know, the use of technology to reduce risk and promote independence, allowing individuals to remain within their own homes for as long as possible. It will reduce the need for in-person care provision, hopefully reduce admissions to hospital, and reduce the amount of discharges to care homes from hospital or admissions to care homes in the first place, because a citizen's home is where they should remain for as long as possible. And most importantly, it's taken a very person-centered approach. We have undertaken some small-scale pilots using tech, and initial findings have been positive, but we would like to explore the potential significant investment in the acceleration of tech across Aberdeen. And that will allow us to further explore the prevention and early intervention element of care provision, considering the central focus of this presentation. And we propose to develop a fuller business case with proposed investment figure and source of funding against perceived benefit, and bring it back to IGB within 9 months. Barbara and I collated a couple of case studies that we felt kind of show the impact tech has had on our service users' lives over the last few months. The first one I will do was a hospital case. There was a service user who had been in and out of hospital repeatedly over a number of months. she was experiencing a really high level of falls. And that was leading to these hospital admissions. She was really struggling to manage her medication, which was affecting her mobility. We put in a COMP device, which is essentially an iPad, and the support staff were able to provide a welfare check and medication prompt through that computer screen to check she was fine, and also remind her to take her medication. Within 4 months, this lady was completely self-sufficient in managing her own medication, and she was discharged without any care package being required.
The next person I'd like to tell you about is somebody who'd been in Roseville House for approximately 6 months. At that stage, they were exploring an admission to a care home environment. And that was largely due to the level of support that was required overnight. So the care management team, in conjunction with the service user and the wider MDT, met to risk assess the situation, and they identified that a large proportion of the individual's overnight needs related to anxiety and a lack of confidence, meaning that the service user required a lot of face-to-face support and reassurance overnight. We did identify that they rarely required physical support. So through that joint risk assessment process, we identified that with the support of the digital support, the use of a COMP and scheduled welfare calls we could, and also a traditional care package during the day, we could support that person to return to their shelter housing complex. That was in keeping with their wishes, and I'm pleased to report that this person has successfully maintained that placement in sheltered housing for 10 months. She's reporting increased confidence and reduced anxiety due to the security of the video calls, but also the reassurance that should it be required, a face-to-face visit overnight could be provided.
Finally, this one relates to a couple. We had a husband and wife who lived at home, and he was the main carer for his wife who had dementia, and he was admitted to hospital. The family were really concerned about leaving the lady alone in her home, and had asked for some emergency respite. We had concerns about taking her out of her familiar environment into a familiar environment, and worried about the distress that might cause her. So we approached the this digital support hub, really blank, and we used a blended approach of welfare checks using the COMP screen that I mentioned earlier. We put sensors on our doors, and we used a Sidley band, which is a kind of watch band which monitors various aspects of health and well-being, blood pressure, heart rate, fall sensor. And we also put in some face-to-face visits, including one planned overnight visit. And the husband was discharged from hospital a week later, and they still remain living together. I think that was a year ago. And they're still living at home together with very minimal care support. This situation had really impacted their daughter. Her stress levels were really high. She was worrying about her dad in hospital and the welfare of her mum, and the thought of her going into a care home was really distressing. So she was really grateful and relieved for the digital support that was provided. It's a successful outcome.
James Maitland, Transformation Programme Manager of Aligned to Digital. I'm going to cover off the governance structure that we'll have in terms of these programmes of work. Phase A and Phase B, you'll remember from the slides earlier, Phase A is a social practitioner, social work practitioner, care commissioning portal. Now, these are mainly aligned to Aberdeen City Council structure or infrastructure. So we'll be utilising a lot of the governance in terms of Aberdeen City Council's IT for progressing the programmes of work. Now, aligned with that, we'll also be moving forward with the regular programme and project governance in terms of projects, etc. But also in terms of any changes, updates, schedule of updates, of regular meetings in terms of that with our colleagues from Aberdeen City Council. We've integrated with NHS Grampian Digital Board at an early stage. We've got Phase 2, which will incorporate a lot of health information. However, it's important to us to have conversations with them from an early outset to make sure that they are aware of the programme or the trajectory of work that we're moving on. We then align with our SLT, Aberdeen City Health and Social Care Partners, SLT, to make sure that they're updated with programme of work, that we're on time, also in terms of budget, etc. as well, so governance structure in place
to progress this project.
Hey, James. So I think that brings us to the end of that presentation, and hopefully you get the sense that there is a common theme there around being person-centred. Whether it's the social work practitioner at Home Care Commission and Portal, or indeed some of the initial findings from our experience using tech-enabled care, as well as seeking to achieve best value with the resource we've got and improving the staff experience. So as outlined at the start, John, seeking permission to progress with the project set out in the full business case, Index 1, permission to develop the outline business case regarding tech-enabled care.
Thank you very much, guys. Really good presentation. Questions? Martin.
Thank you. I wanted to ask about the app and the portal. Yeah, I think it's really exciting. It's really good to see these transformative digital forward for businesses. That's really good to see. Questions about the outcome. So I appreciate that there will be better gathering information or data through conversations and through enhanced communication using digital platforms. So that's really helpful, and it's good that we'll be able to capture information about quality of life. So that's a lot of very useful material. I just want to get a sense of the next stage of the more meta level where you're evaluating the information. You need to have that second order where you're making decisions about using resources, finding the right treatments and resources and so forth. Get a sense of how the information is managed. Is improved outcomes making a difference?
I think, and it's a very valid point. I think it's fair to say that we have a lot of data. We're kind of data rich. I think it's how we use that data, and I think this will give us the ability to really look at trends, to focus on the differing needs of seeing for the increases. So I think it's going to be easier by having this targeted data. It's going to be much easier to do that research into it. So I think that will obviously help us with future planning in terms of planning our demand, but also targeting specific areas of services where we're seeing specific trends.
I mean, I'm assuming you would have deployed expert teams who would be able to assess the information coming through. Yeah, because you're looking at the outline business case for technology enabled care. So you'd be learning from the business cases. Yeah, I just think that that's an important point.
Yeah.
Well, you've got to make very difficult judgments, very difficult professional judgments.
You have, and it's important to have
skill,
the right data, and for us to understand what is that data telling us. That's why I think we're data rich. It's not always very good at analysing it. And I'm just going to make another point, but I forgot it. So I'm like, you lost my age. Sorry, I'll come back to me.
Thank you.
Yeah. James, I'll bring you something.
So thank you very much for the presentation, and particularly for the case studies. It's really impressive and credit to yourselves to bring this to life and show us the impact this is having. A couple of really daft questions from the integrated impact assessment. What's your thinking around overcoming the potential resistance on the part of service users to recording? I personally use similar techniques in my own life, but I appreciate there may well be users who have real concerns over the reporting of data.
And that's absolutely something we've considered as we've gone through this process. And I suppose we accept that, you know, adult services supports a wide variety of people with different needs and different conditions. So we accept that recording somebody is not going to be. What the app does allow is that when you leave a person's house, you could have the app working in your car and you could thirdly summarize the meeting instead of actually having the phone out in front of the
Or go back to the office to then type on it.
By that point, you know, you've got another 10 emails waiting for you and things like that. So we do recognise that it won't be 100% used with every single person that we interact with, but there is kind of that still added value benefit for everybody.
Second, Nicola, your presentation, the kind of workflow would be the member staff comes in, they have that conversation. That's really good to hear that there would be that opportunity to build that rapport free of distractions and devices. And I think you said, and apologies if I'm misinterpreting you here, that the user would then have the opportunity to review the summary. Is there intended, so is that intended to be kind of an on-device review? And if that's the case, I noticed in the IIA, it mentions that this would be co-designed with social work staff. Is there also an intention to do some live testing with users to make sure that they are able to do whatever it is they need to do for that review on the part of the service user?
Yeah, as I say, we've been working really closely with the Microsoft representatives throughout to make sure that this is as service user friendly as possible. So I'm hoping we will get the opportunity to try it and test it out with some service users before we actually take it wider. When I was speaking about the review, as far as, unless I've misinterpreted it, you can kind of review the conversation at the end where we play back and review everything we've spoken about, kind of summarised to the service user. But yeah, we absolutely are hoping we'll be able to test it with a small sample of service users before we take it wider.
I'm sure the Microsoft team have this one in hand, but I would be remiss if I didn't just throw in the caveat of on-device accessibility tools. I think particularly in front of my mind at the moment, given some of the updates to NHSG and ACC security policies, which have meant that some of the assistive tech that would be used to work mobile device, for example, no longer works because they broke it with security. So I just thought I'd throw that in there as potential risk. Two other questions, which I'll try and group together. Firstly, would this also include ongoing training for the packages for social work and care commissioning staff? And the second question, is this intended to be a static product, or would the eventual, and I'm trying not to go into the exact, John, so tell me if I am, would the eventual contract include periodic updates, obviously as AI and as all these underlying technologies increase? Will that just feed through in the back end to improve this over time?
So I'll maybe take the first point and I'll pass over to colleagues for the second point. So we've been through a big journey through the implementation of Dynamic 365. So we have learned a lot in terms of our staff training needs around that. So we would be taking the lessons learned from that and building on it. What we have for that different people need different things in terms of their learning and development, particularly around new technology. So we would do a bit of a combination, much like we did with D365 in terms of in-person, what videos, what written skills, etc. And it would be an ongoing process as it has been.
They'd come along to some staff sessions over the last few months and kind of do a QA session with staff already. So we're already kind of trying to identify some of those needs early on. So we've kind of got a springboard to Craig for the take.
So yeah, absolutely. So that would be evolved as part of looking at this basically an ECC product effectively in the NHS designed for that consumer. This all the time technology available. Work closely with Microsoft as it's been outlined throughout this. So we get access to what they're intended to test that out, make sure that that's like that is suitable and is beneficial for that need. That's obviously tested and safe environment in terms of that, versus a sandbox environment, so that it's not live. Do that. If there's any changes being spoken about, there's changes, it's critical to share that with staff that use that product. Otherwise, there's risk around this.
That's really good to hear. I mean, if we look at how far we've come in terms of recording and summarizing, even just for personal use cases, even just in the last 6 months, never mind the last 2 years, we're already seeing that accuracy forward leaps and bounds. So it's really good to hear that we've got an evolving beast in the background. Thanks, John. Thank you all.
Sandra, do you have a question?
Yeah, mine is, why are we actually developing an app? I suppose what the question is. I'm so surprised that there's not something out there already that could be taken off the shelf and used. And we can't be the first setup, because perfectly frank, I thought a lot of this was ongoing anyway in what we do. And I certainly remember back when I was on the board of Langston Housing Association, which was a long time ago. There was so much chat about all that we're talking about today. So I was reading this and coming to this thinking, gosh, I thought a lot of this was actually in place. And taking on Mercedes' point as well, I've been staggered about the use of AI in my life just in the last few months. So going to a Bellman Cinema meeting, we do it on AI, and you've got your summary, your meeting at the end of the meeting, and you can share it with everybody before you're even out the door. And so the use of AI and so on is just galloping ahead. And I know there's concerns about some of that, and I don't know what the board's appetite around risk around some of that is as well. But I suppose I was just thinking about the big number here of producing an app, but it was also the ongoing annual costs, and it just made me want to stop and think: is there not something else that? Well, I'm sure that you've looked at all of that, and there isn't, but it did surprise me, I'll be honest.
Yeah, no, it's fine. So no, it's a valid point in terms of technology. There's off-the-shelf products that potentially could be used. The difference is that there's restriction potentially around how we can actually integrate with them at what scale. So from having these platforms, like we set out with Dynamics 365, although we set it out as a platform, and that platform is already starts to take on additional services. We've seen likes of social care, we've seen educational psychology go to that as well. We're now looking at a wider care piece around it. We're looking at potentially some other internal services. It's really about us taking the fate of our systems and being able to control, develop them, manage them. I've worked in technology for about 15 years, and we have to potentially vote on things. We have to pay additional development fees to get changes made to it. We spoke about things like AI integration and kind of Copilot. These are kind of product lines that we can utilize on our platform. So rather than looking at one thing that we can't potentially connect everything to, be able to build that on our existing platforms. That's probably
so it's rationalising our estate to work for us and minimising the number of third parties that we're having to deal with. And the exciting bit about it is, as Craig sort of fell there, is that this capability could be applied to other council services or even health services in due course. And because we're designing it to meet our needs, it's more likely to be a success for us. The other thing too is about the form filling that has to be done by staff. This will be designed in a way that helps to fill out the forms more instantly than just simply having a summary of a meeting. So there is an added value aspect to it as well. That will allow us to save some time that's been identified in the business case.
And through you, Chair, who will hold the intellectual property on the app at the end of the day? Microsoft or?
So it's within our own environment in terms of that. So It's Azure Cloud, which is a Microsoft product, but it's within our own gift in terms of control.
I mean, somebody else wanted to use it, we could license it to them and get some cash.
I'm not a licensing expert, so I couldn't answer that question, but what I'm saying is the data is our data, we've said already. Data rich. We have a lot of data, but it's about how we manage that data in the right ways and about how we secure that data in the right ways. That's through that.
And I guess for you, Chair, the data is not just, you know, figures of date of birth and things like that. A lot of it will be written views and so on. And I think, you know, you're still going to need humans to interpret and understand and know and the person that's it's about. I just from a personal point of view, with my elderly mum, I've just had access to OnCare, and it's absolutely changed the way that I can actually read now. Any time a carer has been in to see her, I can read how they have found her on that day, and it's invaluable. So I get that, but it's just I feel more reassured. I'm still. I still think there will be a risk register around issues, and we all know that it's difficult when you try to get an app off the ground yourselves, and you know we've tripped over and seen others flounder sometimes with things that they've tried to put in place. So you know, let's hope that we have those risks mitigated or seen up front, and so that we can make sure that we do get the product that we want that will help our staff. And a lot of it, I mean, the big thing for me at the beginning was staff capacity and time. And if we just don't have the number of people coming through and we don't have the money to do it, you know, more reassured.
Okay, any questions? Can't see any hands. I think in the chat, David Blackburn is having to leave at 1. He says he supports the idea, and he's got a colleague in digital at Aberdeen Uni who would be to advise and help. That would be helpful. Okay. Are we happy to do the recommendations?
Can we ask for a register? I mean, will it be included into a register of its own, or then you know, just to make sure that we have sight of those risks to it? That would be
absolutely, yeah. It's part of the governance structure highlighted earlier on. There'll be a holistic analysis of the risks, as with the implementation of any cutting edge technology, there will also be risks that we're aware of the need to monitor that.
And there'll be risks if we don't do it. So,
absolutely.
Yes, yeah. Excellent, thank you.
Okay. We've got 2 items left, but I am conscious of time. Been in meetings where first 5 items on the agenda get significant debate and discussion, and the last 5 items on the agenda get through on the mound because people are tired. So I'm thinking if we just take 5, just to kind of get our heads back into a sort of thinking space. I don't want to prolong things too much, but I just think it'd be good to take a wee break.
Good thing.